Hello, and welcome to episode 80 of 10,000 Stitches podcast, a sort of sometimes weekly podcast all about the joys of knitting. My name is Andy, and sorry for missing last week. I know I mentioned that I might be missing a week here or there, as we approach the end of the year. What's funny is last week it's not that I didn't have things to talk about. I had plenty of things to talk about. I literally just ran out of time over the weekend to record. And especially now that we've hit daylight savings time, it gets dark so early that it's typically getting dark by the time I come home from work, even if I leave work a little bit early. So I don't have an opportunity to record after work anymore. So I ran out of time on Sunday and I was like, well, I guess there's no episode this week. Anyway, I don't know if I mentioned this. My name is Andy. If you are looking for me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Purlbug, Purlbug. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and then we have the 10,000 Stitches podcast group on Ravelry. If you're looking for links to anything that I mentioned today, patterns, shops, anything like that, if you're watching this via the embedded video on the blog or the Ravelry thread, everything will be linked right below the video. If you are watching this on YouTube, in the description box below the video, there will be a link to the blog post. You can go there and then again find everything linked right below the video. Today is Sunday, November, what is today? 19th, and this episode will go up on Tuesday, November 21st. Happy Thanksgiving, a little bit in advance to any of my viewers here in the US, and happy Tuesday to anyone else. But yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty full episode today because, like I said, I had plenty to talk about last week and I have even more to talk about this week. And I have a decent amount of chit-chat to talk about. So yeah, it might be a little bit longer episode and I apologize for that. Something else I will mention before I get going too far is that I'm kind of having one of those days. I can't be the only one who has these days where I'm just frustrated about a lot of things, some of them within my control, some of them not within my control, and the ones that are within my control I'm probably going to talk about a little bit towards the chit-chat stuff, but I'm just having one of those frustrated days, and so I apologize if any of that sort of comes through when I'm talking about my knitting. I am having a little bit of frustrations with some of my knitting, but that's not like the thing that's annoying me, but when you're in one of those moods, it just permeates everything, so I'm going to try and not let that come through, but in case you can tell, I apologize in advance. Anyway, we'll talk about finished objects today, works in progress, what's coming up next, stuff like that, pretty much all the usual stuff. So let's get into it. We'll start with the elephant in the room, which is my first finished object, and that's my sweater that I'm wearing. I finished this last weekend. This is what I spent a lot of time on last weekend, was just trying to get it busted through and finished. And like I said, it just took a lot of time. So, yeah, this is now done. This is based on the Polly cardigan, which I've made one of before, but this one is very heavily modified. It is an open front cardigan, so you can see there's not really a way I can close it, and that's how I designed it to be. It is 3/4 length sleeve. I think when I talked about this last, I said that, I had one sleeve that I'd done, which was long, and I, just wasn't really loving it. I was thinking that I was going to make the second sleeve shorter and then shorten up the first sleeve, and that's what I decided to do. So these sleeves it's 12 inches from armpit to where the sleeve part ends, and then 3 inches of ribbing, which is 15 inches total, which is just perfect for me to just come down and cover my elbow, and it kind of keeps this upper part of my lower arm warm, but it doesn't get in the way. It's exactly the point where I'd like my sweaters to hit, and it's exactly where I pull my sleeves up to when I pull my sleeves up on long sleeve things. So I think it's just perfect. Also, apologies for a lot of background noise today. I have the windows open because it's really nice here, and the washing machine is running, so yeah. The washing machine, luckily, will shut off soon, I think it's just started its final rinse cycle. So hopefully that'll be done soon. But the street noise, I can't do anything about it. Anyway, back to the sweater. Other modifications that I made, you guys probably can't really tell, but the body is knit in reverse stockinette. And I added these sort of seams to it. I talked about this before, and again, I will link to the blog post that I referred to learn how to do this. But basically it's where you take, your seams, where your seams would be in a seamless sweater. So along the raglan and along the underside of the sleeve and along the side of the body. And you basically insert one extra stitch, and then you use mattress stitch when you're done to kind of close that up. And it provides the rigidity of a seam, but allows you to take advantage of the advantages of a seamless sweater, being able to try it on and all of that. So I did that. The poly has like garter stitch edgings, so it has a garter stitch collar, a garter stitch sleeve bands, all of that. I did them in 2x2 rib. I did it open front. But yeah, I really modified it a lot. Basically, the only thing that I took from the poly was sort of the original stitch counts. And I think that I would definitely sort of do this again. I already have ideas for things that I would want to do differently next time, but I don't know when I will come back to this. But I did make extensive notes so that if I decide to revisit it, I totally can and pick right up where I left off. And if you want to, see the notes that I sort of made and sort of how I revised the pattern, because I don't feel bad sharing that because it's a free pattern, I will link to my project page where I have extensive notes on how I modified this pattern. I knit this on with a US size 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle, and this is my hand-dyed yarn. It's an 80/20 superwash merino nylon blend. It's the one that was originally my Viajante, and now has become this guy. So very pleased about it. I had a decent amount of yarn left over, probably like 50 grams or so. So that was good because I was afraid that I was gonna run out. But yeah, turns out shortening up the sleeve really helped. Yeah, so that's my first finished object. My second finished object, I don't think I've shown you guys these in their fully completed finished state, but these are my fizzy pumpkin drink socks, and you can see they are both done. This is based off of the pattern Effervesce by Pearlescent. I've talked about these a lot, so I'm not going to really go on and on and on about them. I just thought I'd give you another look at sort of how they look. Again, this is my hand-dyed yarn on my 100% BFL base, and yeah, this is, and the colorway is that pumpkin drink, and these were knit with US size 1s. So they are done. I haven't worn them yet, actually. They've been done for probably like 2 weeks now. I haven't worn them because for whatever reason, I got it in my head that these are going to be my Thanksgiving Day socks, and so I'm just saving them to wear them on Thanksgiving. I don't know why, but that's what my brain decided, and so that's what I'm gonna do now. But they are done. I'm very excited about them. These were definitely a labor of love. Like the first one I really enjoyed. The second one, I mean, again, I really enjoyed it, and I really love working with this yarn, and I really love the pattern, but the second one just got to be a little bit of a slog by the time I got to the bottom of it. So, but I mean, hey, that's just how it goes, I think, all the time with socks. So those are done, and then I actually have another finished object. I have so many finished objects this week. This is not something I was planning on making, but it is something that I made not so much for the pure joy of making it, but because I needed the product, right? This was a 100% product knit, and that is a teeny tiny little purse. And the reason that I made this is because, well, so I've been doing a lot more traveling lately with, Wesley having moved away, and I like to travel very light. I tend to just bring a backpack with me. And I don't want to have anything but the backpack when I'm going through the airport. So I don't want to have a separate purse. I just want everything to be contained within the backpack. And then I've talked about before, I have like my plane pouch that I take out once I'm actually on the plane and, stuff like that. But I don't want to have like another purse, while I'm walking through the airport. So the last time I went up to see Wesley, I have this little gray purse that's just about big enough to fit my phone and my wallet in it, and that's it. And I took that with me, which was great, and it was perfect because I could kind of shove it in my bag, but it has some structure to it, and it just took up way too much space in my bag. So I was kind of like, all right, I can do better, right? I can make something better. So this is what I made, and it is just big enough to fit my phone. You can see, here's my phone. Here's the size of this thing. So it is just big enough to fit my phone, and then I have a little like card wallet, and that's all it fits. And that's all I wanted it to fit. And the reason that I wanted to knit one is because I wanted it to be just really squishy so I could just ball it up, shove it in my bag, and not have to worry about it, getting all bent out of shape basically on the trip up there. And then I pull it out when I need it, and I shove it in my bag when I don't, and I don't have to worry about it. to that end, this is actually knit out of acrylic yarn, which is something I haven't worked with in quite a while. And like, I'm not one of those people who's going to knock acrylic yarn, right? There is a time and a place for acrylic yarn, and this is definitely one of them. Because again, I want to be able to shove this in my bag and not worry about it, not worry about mistreating it, and acrylic yarn is perfect for that, right? Like, I don't have to worry about if it gets wet or dirty or whatever, because I'm just not that attached to the yarn that it's made out of. It's just Red Heart. This is actually made out of Red Heart Super Saver, and I already had this for whatever reason, but it's just Red Heart Super Saver to the rescue. This is colorway, what is it? 0400, I think. It's Gray Heather. Yeah, worked great. I knit this on a US 5, which is a 3.75 millimeter needle, I believe. And sort of where this pattern came from, you can see it's this really beautiful cable pattern. And where this came from is actually a pattern that I snagged for free on Ravelry. They had it for free for like a limited promotional period, and now I think it's like $5. And it's not a pattern for a bag at all. It's a pattern for a giant blanket. And this is what it looks like. It's called the Aspens, and it's just this giant, chunky, beautiful, cabled blanket. And, you know, when I saw the pattern, I totally fell in love with it. And you can actually see my little note on here. I printed it out, I grabbed it and printed it, and I was like, well, maybe I can use this for some fingerless mitts or some socks or something. I just was like, I love this pattern. I will never make this giant blanket, but I love the pattern, and I thought I could use it for something else. So I kind of edited it down, like took part of the chart, and that is where this cable pattern came from. And it worked really great, and I really love it, and I think this gray yarn really shows it off well. I just finished this morning. It actually took me longer to like knit the strap than to knit the entire rest of the purse, because the strap just has to be so long because I want it to be a crossbody. I did realize, however, that so the strap is knit in garter stitch, and it is way too stretchy because, of course, garter stitch stretches along the rows. So I might need, I am going to take a crochet hook and do, I think, like a line of slip crochet stitches up the back of the strap just to kind of give it some rigidity. But I don't have the right crochet hook for that here, so that'll have to wait until tomorrow because the crochet hook I need is in my desk at work. But other than that, it's done, and I'm just like really, really pleased with it. It's one of those things to where, yes, I maybe could have gone and bought another purse that sort of would have served this purpose, but this just does it so perfectly, and it's something that I made, and I'm just really proud of it because it just looks exactly the way I want it to. So yeah, very, very pleased with that, and glad to have it done. Glad to have the strap done because the strap was just exhausting to do. Which brings us to my works in progress. So when I showed Wesley the bag that I made, it apparently reminded him of something that I promised to make him a while ago and haven't gotten around to yet, which is a laptop sock or case or sleeve, whatever you want to call it. But I don't remember if I mentioned this, but he got a new laptop in the spring. He got a new MacBook Pro, and around the same time, he also got rid of his backpack because his backpack was just falling apart. And so now he just sort of has like a shoulder bag and doesn't really have anything that has sort of a built-in laptop carrying thing. And his laptop fits in his shoulder bag just fine, but like there's no padding. And so he, at the time, had requested sort of a laptop sleeve to protect his laptop, as he had to move it around. And, he doesn't have to bring his laptop back and forth to work or anything. But apparently for his work, he might be doing some traveling soon. And so, he got reminded that this is a thing that he wanted, and I told him I would make him one, and so now I'm on the hook to make him one. And I had been avoiding doing this simply because things like this are really tough for me because it has to fit a specific thing, right? Like my purse, I just knew that it just has to be big enough to fit my phone, but if it was a little bit too big, it wasn't a big deal. But like a laptop sleeve is much more specific, I feel like. Like it really has to fit. And I don't want it to be stupidly too big, and if it's too small, then it doesn't work, obviously. Although if it turns out too small, and I don't realize that until it's done, I have the advantage that I have a laptop that is just slightly smaller than his. I could use it for mine, but that's a lot of work to put into something and then, not be able to give it to him. So I've actually cast this on twice already today and ripped it back out, and I'm going to cast it on again tonight. But I'm going to be using the same pattern, the Aspens pattern, except this obviously will be wider than my purse. Like I said with the purse, I took a chunk of the chart out and sort of modified it to fit the size that I needed. This, I think, I need to measure the purse again, but I think it's going to be closer to the full size of the chart for the blanket. But obviously I'll be knitting it with thinner yarn and smaller needles, so it won't be blanket sized, just small blanket sized. But I'm going to plan to knit it again with US size 5s, same as my purse, because then I kind of already know what my gauge is. And the yarn I'm going to be using for it is another acrylic yarn, because, similar to the reason I made the purse out of acrylic yarn, the yarn isn't the point of this. The point is like the utility. So for one thing, cost-wise, it just makes more sense to knit it out of acrylic. And I don't want Wesley to have to feel like he needs to like baby it or be nice to it. It's like, it's there to be a tool, and I'm happy to make it for him and, put some design effort into making it for him, but it's really just a tool, and I want it to be treated as such. So this is sort of what the yarn I'm using looks like. It's coming up really dark. It's sort of this like navy blue color, but it's like a gray navy, and this is the color that Wesley chose. I sent him some pictures of some yarn yesterday, and I got this at AC Moore, and it is this Stitch Studio Earth Tone, and the colorway is, what is the colorway? The colorway is navy. And this is, like I said, it's a pretty much 100% acrylic yarn. It's sort of like tweedy. It's got little tweedy bits in it. The benefit of this was that the skein was 9.8 ounces, which is 612 yards. So I only needed to buy one skein, and I'm pretty sure that will knock out the whole project, and it was like $5. So sometimes acrylic yarn is the thing that you need. Obviously, this is not the whole skein. I actually, like I said, I've already cast it on a couple of times, and the second time I ripped it out, I was like, okay, the big skein was just too big. Like, I don't know if you've seen those like 1 pound skeins. It was sort of that size. It was just way too big to deal with. So I rolled it off into 3 surprisingly similarly sized balls that would be easier for me to deal with. And I figured, you know what, I'll just join up the yarn. But this is the total amount of yarn that I have. So it's just a stupid amount of yarn. And I have been keeping this in a little project bag that was sent to me by a viewer of the podcast. You know who you are. Thank you again. But how cute is this project bag? It's from New Zealand, and it's got all kinds of New Zealand things on it. It's got little, where is it? Little kiwi bird, which I love kiwi birds. I think they're the cutest things. So thank you again for this. And it's like just the perfect size to kind of contain all of this yarn. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to cast this on again tonight. Part of what I'd been struggling with was I thought I wanted to knit it double-stranded, like hold 2 strands together and knit it with a bigger needle. And I'm just realizing that like that wasn't working. So, as nice as it would have been, because it would have gone faster, because obviously it would have, bigger needle, bigger yarn, knits up quicker. I just think it's not what I was going for. So that's fine. Like I said, I'm going to cast it on again tonight. I would love to have it done to give to him before I leave New Hampshire after Thanksgiving, because I'm going up there for Thanksgiving. I would love to have it done by the time I leave, so I could just leave it up there with him. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to take it with me and use it as my travel knitting, or if I'm just going to say, you know what, if it's not going to be done, then maybe I'll just give it to him for Christmas. I don't know. But the point being, I need to get going on it, because it is a thing that I told him I would make him. And so I need to make it for him. But yeah, speaking of things that I'm knitting for someone else, let's move on to my second work in progress, which is my dotted rays shawl. And this is a pattern by Stephen West, and it was gifted to me by a viewer of the podcast. So again, you know who you are. Thank you very much. And this is just, it's sort of a giant crescent-shaped shawl, but it's sort of asymmetric, because you start at the starting point, which on mine is right here. And you can see you have this eyelet pattern that sort of radiates out from the starting point, but it's not symmetric, right? So it radiates out, you're increasing only on one side, and this side stays, relatively tight, and then the rays sort of spread out on the other side. So I am loving this pattern so far. I am still on my first ball of yarn. I think I showed them last week. I dyed up 3 skeins of yarn for this, and these are all in my That Pumpkin Drink colorway, just with varying amounts of dye. So this is at half saturation, the next one will be at 3/4 saturation, and then the last one, which will be along the outer edge, is at full saturation. So to kind of give this like ombre effect. I'm still on the first one, and the rows have gotten really long by now. Like it's weird because like for the longest time you kind of feel like you're not making any progress, and then all of a sudden it seems like the rows just get really long all of a sudden. But at first I wasn't liking this because I was feeling like I just didn't understand what the pattern, like I couldn't figure out what the pattern meant like intuitively. Like I couldn't anticipate what I was supposed to be doing based on what I had done before, which really annoys me because I prefer to read my knitting versus having to like refer to the pattern all the time, which is also why I prefer charts, because charts kind of lets me see what's happening and I don't have to keep reading. It just lets me see the whole thing all at once. So, there's that. And this is not a charted pattern, but by this point I've figured it out, and then now I understand what it is that I'm doing, and now it's pretty intuitive. But at the beginning it just was not. So if you're trying to do this pattern and you're just like, I don't get it, stick with it. It will sort of make itself clear soon. But yeah, as you can see, it's getting decently large-ish, large enough that I can't spread it all the way out on my needles to show you. But yeah, I'm knitting this on a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle, which is a smaller needle than called for in the pattern. The pattern calls for US 6, but I know a lot of shawl patterns that use fingering weight yarn calls for US 6. I just think that would be too loose. I really like the way Garter Stitch, and this is a Garter Stitch shawl, I really like the way Garter Stitch knits up on a US 4. I just think it's a good fabric density. It's not too dense, but it's also not super loose either. So I really like it. It has, just great drape, as you can see. Like, it's just very floppy. And I'm very excited. And this is being knit for Wesley's mother, because she requested this shawl, or she requested a big shawl in this colorway, and this is the one that I picked because I thought it would just be really perfect, and it's a pattern I've been wanting to knit for a while. And I actually saw on Ravelry, we'll see if I can find the picture of it while I'm editing this, but someone had done this dotted raised shawl using a like a watermelon sort of gradient set or gradient. And now I'm like, yes, when I make one of these for myself, it needs to be watermelon themed because it's just magnificent. So hopefully I will have put that picture in so you guys can see how amazing it is. But I was like, yes, when I get around to making this for myself, that is what it needs to be because I'm a huge watermelon fan. But that's that. Okay, I have another work in progress. Like it is a bumper crop day for finished objects and works in progress, I guess. But my last work in progress is my Christmas socks, which I am nearing completion on the first one, as you can see. And these are what I've been working on at work, just sort of, for the past couple weeks or so, since I finished my pumpkin drink socks. And so this yarn is my hand-dyed yarn in the chocolate peppermint bark colorway. So you can sort of see how that knits up. It's really great. Like, it's a highly variegated yarn, but it just sort of really knits up well. It doesn't pool. You can see even around like the gusset, like it doesn't pool. And this was dyed using the technique that I showed in my crock pot dyeing tutorial, where you sort of dye the yarn when it's twisted up into a hank, and it produces this pattern. So this one was dyed once with red, once with brown, but same method for both. And you can see it produces this yarn that is just highly variegated, but there's no pooling. And I just think this is great. And if this is something, you're looking for, which is a yarn that has lots of different things to it, but doesn't pool, try it out. I'll link to the tutorial, not to toot my own horn, but I mean, come on. And it's easy too, right? It's an easy technique to do. But anyway, so that's what the body is. I'm knitting it on a stellina base, which is I think it's a 70% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 5% stellina, something like that. One of those kind of standard bases. This top cuff is Cascade Heritage sock on just a cream colorway. The heel is one of my hand-dyed yarns. It's a 75 BFL, 25 nylon, and dyed up red, and then I'm going to do the toe again in this cream color. And I have about, I think, 20 rows left before I start the toe. I'm knitting this on a US 0, which is a 2mm needle, so it's a pretty densely knit sock, but I really like the way that this yarn is working up on a US 0. So yeah, and this is the first one, so this is what I have so far, but I'm just really loving it and really excited to, you know, have them to wear. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to be something that I take with me when I'm traveling because, you know, it has 3 different balls of yarn that I kind of need to carry around with it, so that's kind of a lot. So this one, again, might just stay at home when I'm traveling for Thanksgiving, but it's definitely putting me in the Christmas spirit, which is really great, and I'm really enjoying that. And speaking of that, this sort of gets into what's coming up next, but I am going to show you guys this. It's like just off camera. I was hoping you might be able to see it, but it's like just right there. But if you were around last year, you remember that I did my own sort of advent calendar for Scrappy Socks, and I'm doing that again this year. And I actually set it all up yesterday, except for this one. This drawer is pulled out because that is going to be this yarn once I'm finished with this first one. I just need to remind myself that that's where it needs to go because I sort of tried to like randomize the order of it, and that is the last one that needs to go in on day 13 apparently. But otherwise, I'm super excited because this is all set up now, and that was really annoying to do because it took forever winding off all the little balls of yarn, but I think the result will totally be worth it. And this is sort of like a reusable advent calendar thing that I got last year from Target, and it was like, I don't know, like $25 or something, which was kind of a lot, but I only have to buy it once, and now I have it every year, so there is that. Other than those advent socks, I don't even want to think about like in, you know, my what's coming up next sort of segment because I just have a lot of stuff to finish, right? So I'm going to be, you know, knitting those advent socks during December. I want to get this dotted raised shawl finished, which like I said, right, the rows are just getting really long and it's like a 3 skein project. So again, this comes back to, you know, some of these big shawls are sweater size projects. So there's that, there's Wesley's laptop case, finishing up my other Christmas sock, right? I have a lot of stuff on my plate. I want to really clear off some of this stuff before we hit the end of the year, right? I would also like to finish my Undine socks maybe before the end of the year. So I think, you know, December is definitely going to be a month of like getting through WIPs more so than anything else, plus my advent socks. And then we'll talk about what's coming up next in the new year once we get there. But yeah. So choking on my own spit. Oh my gosh, I'm dying. This is how it ends, right? You guys get to see it on YouTube. Maybe not. Maybe I'm okay. Anyway, so that's coming up next. We're just gonna leave it until New Year's. What else? Dyeing. That's another thing that I've done a lot of dyeing this weekend, and I can't show you guys any of it because it's all sort of in the other room, still not dry enough to really show. I did want to show one thing that I dyed, which I don't actually have anymore, but this is. So there was that thing going around on Instagram about a week or so ago, the whole like get your yarn wish granted, which I don't really fully understand how it works, but you know, whenever it sort of pops up, I do like to kind of scroll through and see if there's anything that I have to offer, which is usually not very much. But I happened to see a post by someone who was looking for a skein of yarn dyed up, inspired by a picture that she had. There's someone yelling outside. Anyway, inspired by a picture that she had. And I was like, well, that is a thing I can do, right? So the picture was of this really beautiful purple sort of clover. And I will put up a picture on the screen right now of what the yarn looks like that I dyed based off of that picture. So that yarn is already in the mail, headed away from me across the ocean. But I was really pleased with sort of how the yarn turned out. And the picture that I put up, yes, that is taken in my bathroom because I was trying to take the picture early in the morning, and the bathroom is the only place that has like nice white, bright lighting. Everything else is very yellow in here, and I didn't have any natural light. So I was like, this is where I will take the picture. And even then I still had to kind of fiddle with the colors to get it to look right. But yeah, I was just really, really proud of how it turned out, and just terribly excited. But otherwise, yeah, I've been doing a lot of dyeing. All of that stuff should hopefully be up on Etsy before I leave for Thanksgiving. And I really want to try and clear out the yarn over the Thanksgiving weekend, hopefully. And I'm probably going to take December off of like putting anything on Etsy. I'm probably just going to take December off of dyeing in general, unless I get sort of a, crazy idea or something. I do have some bare yarn left in case I get one of those crazy ideas. But like I said, I just want to focus on December, like getting my WIPs done, like doing, things for me, being selfish, and also just, I know December is totally going to get away from me. And so I just don't even want to think about like, Etsy or trying to like send out yarn or anything. So I'm probably going to have some sort of a coupon code or something for over Thanksgiving weekend to try and incentivize like getting that cleared out. And yeah, I will definitely let you guys know. Tell you what, I will have a coupon code ready for when I edit this, and I will put it on the screen, and I will also put when it is good for, and that way you guys sort of get first crack at things. Granted, there's not a lot in the shop, but I would like to, sort of clear it out before I put it on vacation mode for December. Anyway. Enough talking shop. What else? Question of knit along, right? So let's talk about the knit along. So we are into our last knit along of 2017, and my brain is still cranking away on what we're gonna do for 2018. Hopefully I'll know that sooner rather than later. But anyway, for 2017, it's kind of crazy to think that we are like, almost to the end of the first month, like that we're chugging along on the first month. And we've had a decent number of finished objects. The theme, remember, for this knit along, the color is gray or brown. And the technique theme is try something new, right? So like I said, that can be a whole lot of different things. And yeah, I've been seeing lots of new things, and it's very exciting. And if you want more details on sort of the rules or what, new things could be, I always link to the current chatter thread in my notes for the episode, unless of course you're watching this on Ravelry, in which case you can just go back out to the group and find the chatter thread. But there's lots of stuff there on kind of like what counts and what doesn't. But this one's pretty open, and I'm excited to see more finished objects rolling in. And I don't actually have a physical prize for that one yet, because like I said, I'm going up to Montreal over Thanksgiving break, and so hopefully I can pick up something kind of special at one of the yarn stores there. But we also have had a pattern donated by someone who, found the podcast, and it's Marie Amelie Designs, and she's a designer that's on Ravelry. I will of course link to her designer page. I don't know why I'm running out of words, but anyway, I'll link to her designer page on Ravelry. But seriously, you should go check her designs out, because they are just the most amazing things. Like, I'm pretty sure she's French, because a lot of her patterns are in French. And like these patterns to me just exude Frenchness in like the best possible way, right? Like there's sort of this, stereotype about like French women and, all of that. And like her patterns just really capture that like in the best way. Like they are feminine, but they're not like girly, if that makes sense. And they are sophisticated, and they're simple, but like they all have sort of like that detail that really like makes it. And I'm in love with like all of her patterns. And like I said, I think they're all written in French, and some of them are available in English. And it kind of kills me that they're not all available in English, because it's just, I don't speak French, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I want to make all of these things. And so she has donated a, pattern of the winner's choice from her shop. And so, yeah, definitely go check out her designs, because I just can't even. I love them so much, and she is just such a talented designer. So yeah, definitely check her out. But yeah, that's that question of the week. I had one. Okay, yes. Sorry. I realized when I like when I was saving one of the clips, like the break between clips, that this is sort of the first time I'm actually speaking today. I haven't really spoken all day because I, of course, live alone now. And so I can go through an entire weekend day without actually talking to anyone. So maybe that's why my brain is having a hard time, because it's like, oh, you've had to talk for a long time now. I'm not used to, you haven't warmed me up for this. Anyway, question of the week. My question of the week this week is not really knitting related, but it could be knitting related. And it is, what's a good book you've read recently? Because I'm trying to sort of, get back into reading more, because I go in like spurts with reading. Like sometimes I am just like chewing through books like crazy. And then sometimes I have huge dry spells where I just can't get motivated to read. And so recommend me some books. They could be books related to knitting, but I typically read nonfiction. But I'm not like, I do like fiction. I'm just very picky about the kind of fiction I read, and I'm less picky about the nonfiction that I read. But yeah, recommend me a book that you have read recently, and I'd love to hear it. I always like, adding more things to my book reading list, and I figure the more things on that list, the more heavily it weighs on me and gets me to actually read books. But yeah, that's my question of the week this week. And if you were only here for the knitting sort of stuff, that's going to be it. I'm sorry that this is probably already pretty long. I think it's already coming up probably on about 40 minutes already. So thanks for hanging out for, this long. I know this is usually about how long my total episodes are, but thanks for hanging out with me for this long. And if you are curious about what else has been going on in my life, why I'm frustrated, stuff like that, hang around and we'll do some chit-chat. I hope you guys don't mind, but I'm going to work on getting those last 20 rows done before I can start the toe on this while I do chit-chat. And before I start talking too much about sort of what has me all frustrated, I did want to mention I recorded a vlog, I don't even know, a couple weeks ago now, almost a month ago, I think, where I went out in search of a pair of boots. And I was very annoyed that day because I couldn't find what I was looking for. Like I could find one pair of boots and like they were super expensive, and I was just super annoyed, just not having a good day about it. And this was like mid-October. So I wanted to follow up on that and say that yesterday I went up to the same shoe store, and now they finally had boots in stock, and I was actually able to find exactly the ones that I had originally wanted in my size, in a color that I wanted. And it was like the only one, like they had one pair that was in my size and in the color that I needed. And so I bought them, and I wasn't really expecting to spend that kind of money yesterday. I mean, they were cheaper than the pair I found before, but they were still like $80. So not cheap, but definitely a decent price for something that is like sort of a long-term investment thing, right? These are not like a one-season thing. These are a thing that I will have for a long time. So future me put in a picture. I took a picture of them, so I thought I would show you guys, because I had, put it in a vlog. I thought I would show you the conclusion, which is that I did finally manage to find those boots. But yeah, now let's get back to everything else. So in terms of what's been going on, right, I've been, working my butt off like crazy. We're coming into the end of the semester, and, for anyone who works in an academic environment or even, remembers what it's like, it's crazy, especially, like, I feel like fall semester, the end is always crazier than spring semester, because with fall semester, you have the holidays to where, you have Thanksgiving where, you typically the week of Thanksgiving is sort of just lost, right? Regardless of how many days there are classes, like for us, Monday and Tuesday, the university's open, and then the university shuts down at noon on Wednesday. And so, but those days are basically gone anyway, right? Like nothing real happens those days. And so you basically lose an entire week, and then you come back and there's maybe 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's finals. And it's very disruptive to kind of have Thanksgiving in there like that. And, of course, there's nothing to really be done about it. But I feel like it makes fall semester, the end of fall semester, just seem way crazier than in the spring. but yeah, so things have just been crazy at work. It's also been, I've been trying to plan for my Thanksgiving travels, which is just always kind of crazy too. I am very excited for Thanksgiving travels though, because I get to go see Wesley again, so that's always a good thing. And I'm probably not going to vlog this trip just because, I don't know, I just want to really enjoy it and not have to worry about vlogging. Plus, I'm going to be vlogging in December. I'm going to be doing Vlogmas, and so I figure you guys will be getting enough vlogs from me that I don't need to, bother with vlogging our trip to, or vlogging my Thanksgiving travels. So yeah, do expect to see Vlogmas, and that's probably the next time you guys will see me, because I will not be recording an episode next week either. So you probably will see me again next on December 1st. So yeah. Okay, so that's most of my life right now. It's just kind of boring. So let's talk about why I am so frustrated and what I'm doing to resolve this. So this weekend especially, I have been just very frustrated because I feel like I have not been using my time well. And this is a feeling that I commonly get on weekends, right? I never feel like, oh, I really use this weekend to its fullest potential, which is probably more so symptomatic of my expectations of weekends versus what I'm actually doing, because I always envision weekends to be these very productive times and forget that I need the weekend to sort of recover from the week and set up properly for the next week, and that I just can't be doing all the things that I want to be doing on the weekend. But that's a thing that again needs to be fixed. But I just I talk a lot about like finances and stuff like that. And so obviously like I spend a lot of time and energy sort of trying to think about like, how do I spend my money? And I almost spend as much time and energy trying to think about like, how do I spend my time, right? Because to me, time and money are sort of on equal footing, with time actually edging out money in terms of like, how precious is it? Because there's always more money to be made, but like, time is a very finite quantity, and it is constantly slipping away every second of every day, right? And so, when I feel like I haven't been using my time well, that really gets under my skin and really bothers me, and tends to be a good impetus for like, things need to change. And I've really been feeling that a lot this weekend and, past weekends. Especially because, when Wesley moved away, it sort of threw my life into upheaval, and I was like, okay, this is fine. This is a good time for me to change some things that I maybe, change some habits that I didn't like very much, or, change some things about myself that I didn't like very much. And obviously it's hard to change your habits. It's hard to change your personality. And I definitely have been feeling lately like I've been backsliding into things that I didn't want to be doing. And which just means that I need to work a little bit harder at it. Like, a big one for me is I waste a lot of time watching like YouTube, and just like garbage on YouTube. Not so much like the knitting podcasts that I follow, because those, to me, I don't view that as wasted time. But like, I watch a lot of just other, just garbage on YouTube. And that is a thing that really needs to change. And I really need to stop doing it. I also just don't prioritize things properly. Like right now, my apartment is a disaster because this weekend I've been putting everything else before cleaning up the apartment. Even though like cleaning up the apartment is probably the most important thing, because if the apartment's a mess, I just feel horrible about my life. And it's like this sort of feeling horrible that I can't figure out why I feel horrible. I'm just like, everything is wrong with the world and I don't know why. And it's like, well, because your apartment's a mess, right? Because your living space is a disaster, everything is a disaster. And I just am bad about like deciding like what needs my time most urgently. And I get sucked into things that are not important. And I need to do better about that. I've also just not been eating very well lately, which that is, it's not really out of my control, but I've been blaming it on things that I think are outside of my control. So, right. So I've talked about, having all this dental work done, which I don't remember if I mentioned it, but I am finally done with it now, right? Like I had my last set of fillings done, but like some of the fillings were pretty deep and they still are just a little bit sensitive, which happens. And they will eventually settle down, but like, I just have to kind of wait. Like nerves in general are just very annoying and very slow to heal. And I feel like teeth nerves, especially, just like they just really want to hang on to being painful. And so I've been having problems where like I just can't eat anything that's very crunchy because it hurts to like chew crunchy things. And so because of that, I've been avoiding vegetables because vegetables tend to be a little bit tougher, a little bit more fibrous, and just require more chewing. And I've been avoiding vegetables, which is not good, right? It's not good for my health to be avoiding vegetables. And most of the things I've been eating that are a little bit softer and easier to eat, not good for me. So, but like this is, some of that is outside of my control, but like the fact is that I could still be eating vegetables. I just need to choose softer vegetables or maybe just cook them a little bit more than I otherwise would want to. But like, it doesn't mean I can't be eating vegetables. And so, I haven't been eating very well. I haven't been exercising lately, which again is another thing that needs to change. So I think that's why like I'm just so frustrated, is because I keep seeing all of these things where it's like I just am very clearly backsliding into very bad habits. And it's like, I know I'm not powerless to change these. I know I have every power in the world to change it. And I think that's why it's so frustrating, is because like I have the power to change this, and then I still let myself, do these things that I know are not good for me and are not good for, all aspects of my life. And that's just frustrating to like have that amount of self-awareness to be able to be like, yeah, you are doing a horrible job at this. But I mean, it's also necessary, because if I didn't have that kind of self-awareness, I wouldn't even know that I was doing a bad job. So, it's frustrating, but at the same time, this is what gets me to change. And this is what gets me to do better about things. You constantly have to be reevaluating your life and the choices you've made and deciding like, could I be doing better? And if you could, you have to put the effort in. And, it's an annoying thing to have to think about, but I feel like at least it's going to get me to do better, hopefully. And so kind of on that note, I want to talk about a book that I've read recently. I know I asked you guys for book recommendations. This is a book that I actually just finished up yesterday. I finished it when I was on the bus coming back from Target. I hit the end of it, which, because I read a lot of my stuff on Kindle, because I get Kindle books from the library, I always feel like ending a Kindle book is always so abrupt, because, obviously sometimes, that like you're at the end because you're reading the epilogue or something and you're like, oh yeah, I'm at the end. But I feel like for books that don't have like an epilogue or something, and especially nonfiction where there is not necessarily a story arc where you're like, yes, I'm at the end. Sometimes it's just all of a sudden like, bam, end. And it's like, oh, okay. Because, especially with nonfiction, you can have, you can be maybe at the 70% mark and you're at the end of the book, because the rest of the book is acknowledgments and footnotes and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just one of those interesting things about reading a Kindle book where, because you don't have sort of the visual cue of like how many pages are left, you just have no idea you're at the end of the book. Anyway, what book was I reading? So the book that I was reading, let me pull it up on my Kindle so I can actually get the title right. Cover. There we go. Okay, so it's called Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me. And the author is Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson. And I think this is a book everyone should read. I think it is so important. And basically what the sort of like subtitle is, Why We Justify Foolish Beliefs, Bad Decisions, and Hurtful Acts. And I think that this book is, like I said, everyone needs to read it. And basically what it's about is it's sort of, it's based around, the idea of cognitive dissonance, which is much more known now, like, it's, sort of in like the common lexicon. But cognitive dissonance is basically what happens when you hold two opposing ideas in your head. And so this causes problems, right? Your brain doesn't like this. It doesn't like trying to deal with like two opposing ideas. So it does anything it can to reduce the dissonance, right? To promote consonance, I think is the word they use. And so like this happens when you make mistakes. And they talk about this, like, let's say you do something stupid, right? Like you make a foolish decision with your money, right? You make a bad investment. So the problem is that then you're in dissonance because you like to think of yourself as a smart, rational human being. But that is that's in disagreement with this foolish mistake you made, right? So this is the dissonance, is that you can't hold these two ideas by saying, like, I am a smart, competent, rational, logical human being, and I made this really stupid, rash decision, right? Like, you can't hold both of those ideas at the same time. And so your brain will try to justify the decisions that you've made because it doesn't want to lose the self-image one, right? That's the most important one to protect, is your self-esteem. And so this book talks about, it in the context of, it talks about sending people to jail wrongfully, right? Wrongfully convicting people. It talks about military decisions. It talks about sort of this happening within the context of relationships, like marriages and stuff. It talks about the problems of this within like medicine, especially like psychology. Just all kinds of different examples. And I was thinking about this book earlier today because I knew I was going to talk about this, and I was trying to think, did I think that there were any chapters that maybe could have been left out? And I don't think so, because I think it's important to sort of see this idea presented again and again and again and again in all these different ways that it can happen. And so I don't feel like there were any chapters that were, completely superfluous. But I think the most important chapter is the end chapter, right? So there's all these examples, and I think those are really good because the most effective way to deal with this, to sort of be better about not doing this yourself, is just understanding that this is a thing that happens, right? That the cognitive dissonance is a thing that happens, and that, you need to catch yourself while you're doing it. But sort of beyond just, more self-awareness, the last chapter does give some sort of, some interesting concrete examples on how to deal with this that at least I personally found interesting. And a lot of them dealt with sort of how like the U.S. education system handles making mistakes and things like that, and sort of the way that we teach children to deal with, and I mean, not children only, but the way that we teach students to deal with like making mistakes. And, as an educator, I thought that was like really important. And, basically it boils down to, here in the States, we really put a lot of emphasis on like innate abilities, right? So if someone does well in school, it's because they're smart, not because they just worked really hard. And that's something that I have experienced before. I think I've talked about this before, where I hate when, I tell people, oh, I do physics, and they say, you must be really smart then. And it's like, no, I worked really hard. Because when they say, oh, you must just be really smart, it completely downplays all of the effort that I've put into my work. And so, that is definitely something that I have experienced as like a student and, as a person, where I don't like that emphasis. And I definitely appreciate when people recognize my hard work rather than like, attribute it to some innate ability. But it's also something that as an educator, I'm not as good at, right? Because I do tend to step in and help students too much and not let them make a lot of mistakes and sit with their errors, because it causes dissonance in me, right? Because it puts these two conflicting things where it's like, I think I'm a good educator and I think I'm good at teaching things. And that's in conflict with my students are obviously not getting it, and they're obviously struggling and having a problem, right? So it's like those two things have a tough time coexisting within my brain. And it's definitely something where I need to work on it. And I need to say, this does not reflect on my ability as an educator. It reflects on my students, and they are in the process of learning. And the process of learning means making mistakes. And I need to let them make mistakes and sit with their mistakes and learn from them. So I thought that was really good. And yeah, just it. The last chapter also talks, sort of in that same sort of vein, it talks about like the fact that yes, a lot of Americans at least are sort of raised with this attitude that like making mistakes means that you're not smart, right? That if you are smart or if you are whatever, then you can't be wrong about things. and realizing that like you can change this attitude at any time, right? Just because a lot of us were raised with this attitude doesn't mean that we're stuck with it forever, right? Like at any time you can change who you are and how you think about things. And, you know, to come back to like the things that I'm frustrated in, it just really sort of was like the I don't know, like it's such an obvious idea that like, of course you can change anything about yourself at any time, but for whatever reason, like I really needed to like see it in a book that was completely unrelated to like the things I was thinking about my own life and be like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, I have these things that I'm annoyed about, I'm frustrated about, whatever. I can totally change them right now. And it's not going to be easy, right? Like, and it's not going to be a pleasant process necessarily, but if these are things that I want to change, I can change them. And I need to, you know, deal with the dissonance of this by saying like, well, that was past me and this is current me. And these are two totally different versions of myself. And just because I, you know, even just 10 minutes ago did this thing that I don't want to be doing doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. And it doesn't mean that I'm a stupid person or a failure or whatever. It just means that like, I need to do a different thing right now. And I think it's important to like remember that like just because you are currently doing something or just because you did something doesn't mean that you have to keep doing that, right? Like you can decide at any point to stop doing something or, you know, conversely to start doing something. And you can decide to change at any point. And it's not easy, right? It's going to be really, really hard, but it's not impossible. And you need to like not beat yourself up about things that past you did, because past you is gone now, right? Like past you is dead. All you have is current you and preparing for future you. So I don't know, maybe that got a little weird. Hopefully you guys didn't notice this, but actually between the last clip and this clip, I had recorded this clip already. And then my computer decided it just wanted to completely freeze up and not record any of that. So I don't know how long I was talking for, but it was all gone. So this is my second take on this. And yeah, I think that's going to be it though, because my guess is that this episode has gotten a little bit long. I'm getting tired of talking, and so I think I need to stop. But thank you very much for hanging out with me if you made it this far. Like I said, I won't be recording an episode next week, so you probably will not hear from me until December 1st, when I will be putting out my first episode of Vlogmas. But I'm super excited to do Vlogmas, and I'm going to try and continue to do regular episodes through December. But, you know, like I said, who the heck knows? End of semester, holidays, who knows? But thank you very much for hanging out with me this week, and I will see you again probably on December 1st. Bye!